So what is it doing to our body when we consume it? So what will happen is that all of these monocultures will be harvested. They will go into a silo. That silo will have phosphorine in it or some chemical to stop the rodents and the insects eating it. It will then have to be transported to some chemical laboratory somewhere in order to become a plant-based food, or in order to be converted into a textured vegetable protein, or something like some sort of protein. And in order to do that, there's patents and there's processes, and it goes to big plants around the planet that take up massive amounts of space, that are on concrete and spew out other things into the environment. Could that be causing problems with carbon as well? And releasing it to the atmosphere. So that's just one. That's just taking the soya to shipping it wherever it needs to be shipped to, going to a laboratory, going through all the processes. Then that becomes, let's say, soy protein isolate. That then soy protein isolate needs to be then moved to wherever the person is that's making that plant-based meat, chicken, fish, milk, wherever it's going, that's what ends up happening. So when you have a look at the scope of all of these chemicals, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder if becoming plant-based is actually going to save the planet. When you go into your grocery store, what you will start to see now, and I see it all the time, and by the way, I'm not one that likes to go to grocery stores anymore. I like to support my local farmers. I like to support my local regenerative farmers. These are people who are more concerned about the soil than their animals or their plants. But by dealing with the soil and making sure the soil's healthy, the animals and plants are healthy. So I have 60 acres. I'm a regenerative farmer. I have been for the last 6 years. I treat my animals with the utmost respect. You should see how healthy they are. If you actually go to my Instagram, which is the Changing Habits Farm or Changing Habits Farm, you will see the health of those animals. So we use our beautiful animals to regenerate the land, and we have for that this 6 years. Our land now holds more water than it's ever held before. So first of all, what we did was that we got the cows to go through. Then the chickens come through after them and they spread their poo. The chickens are amazing. They spread the poo, they take the parasites out, and then they poo onto the land and fertilize our land. So that then increases the ecology of our soil and the organic matter, which then holds more water. We can hold thousands and thousands of litres more per square metre than anybody that's not doing these practices. And from there, because of the amount of water and the amount of photosynthesis that's happening, we take carbon from the atmosphere and put it into the soil. And I can tell you that our land has been tested. It was tested about 3 years ago and we're due to test it again. And what we found was that our organic matter and amount of carbon and water that we were holding was quite incredible. So you can follow that and see what we are doing. So there are more people out there like us. There are regenerative farmers that have decided that they need to look after the soil. It's just like you. If you look after your soil, the microbiome, you can be the healthiest you can possibly be. And I'm going to talk to you more why that is the case. So we look after the soil. But when you go into the grocery store and you're not going to your local farmers markets, or maybe you can't go to your local farmers markets, go to the meat section. On one side is the meat that is being produced by maybe commercial farmers, and I don't agree with that. And then on the other side, you'll see the plant-based ones, and they are growing incredibly. So I want to give you some of the ingredients that are in there. So the first ingredient is usually water. The second ingredient is that TVP, textured vegetable protein, which could be soy protein isolate, soy protein hydrolysate, soy protein concentrate, could be pea protein, could be rice protein. Doesn't matter whether it's a grain or a legume, they all go through a very similar process, and it is a process. It's not something you can do in your kitchen. You have to have it done in a laboratory. So there might be other ones, and I'm going to read these. So if I take my eyes away, it just means I've got some notes over here. So it's methyl cellulose, yeast extract, which is just another name for MSG, cultured dextrose. You got to kind of go, what is that? Food starch modified. There's another one that is called soya Lega hemoglobin. So soya Lega hemoglobin makes the plant-based meat look like it's bleeding. And it is I talk about this in my book, Lab to Table, but it is synthetic biology. It's where we are genetically modifying microbes with animal genes in order to make an additive that then goes into these plant-based meat products that then give you the thought that it is bleeding. Anyway, I talk about that a lot in my book, Lab to Table. So there's salt, there's mixed tocopherols. So mixed tocopherols is synthetic vitamin E. There's soy protein isolate, there's vitamins, minerals, zinc, gluconate, thiamine, hydroxychloride, which is B1, niacin. So they're putting synthetic vitamins in as well because there is no nutrition in this food, so they put these vitamins in. So remember I talked about vitalistic principles. So when we look at that, you might think, oh, it's got B12 because vegans are notorious for losing their B12. It's got B2, it's got B6, it's got B1, it's got this, it's got zinc. You look at it and you think, well, it's the same as this, but we're looking vitalistically. How does your body use these isolated vitamins as opposed to the vitamins that have been embedded in a real plant or a real animal? I want you to, if you have one of those plant-based meats there and you are somebody who has an animal, I want you to read the ingredients of your plant-based meat, and then I want you to read the ingredients of your dog food. You will see that they are very similar. The only thing that I could pick out that is different is that they put cobalt in animal foods, but they don't put it in human food. Interesting. Anyway, check it out and see how you go. So all of those chemicals that I've just talked about have to be made in plants around the world. And if you ever go to where all of these plants are on the Mississippi River, I have actually been there in the US where these chemicals are being made. It's like a jungle of chimneys, metal, steel chimneys. It's quite incredible how much space it takes up. Then each one of those factories that specialize in a vitamin or some sort of chemical, all of those factories have to package all that stuff. And let's say somebody here in Australia wants to buy all of those ingredients to make a plant-based meat, a plant-based dairy, whatever it is that they're doing, that has to travel across the planet to get to that factory. That factory then unpacks all that packaging. It then mixes everything together in the way they want to mix it together. They then package it and then it's sent out into the world or throughout the Australian supermarkets. This is not going to save the planet. This is using fossil fuels. If you do want to be someone that only eats plant-based, think local. Think what is happening around your local area and can you do this? So like I said, when I was a vegetarian, TVP was the only thing. I wouldn't touch that stuff. It was just so bad. Now let's talk about the safety assessment that is done on every one of those chemicals to see if they are safe. So what happens is that they will take those chemicals and they will give it to a rat or a mouse or some research animal, and they will take it to its toxic level and see how much will kill that mouse or that research animal. And they'll give it a safety assessment. But what they're testing, yes, that's right. If you want to save the animals, then perhaps not eat these chemicals because they all have to be safety tested. So what they are safety testing is just the cells, the mammalian cells. They're not safety testing the microbiome. So since 1987, this toxicological testing for safety has been done just on mammalian cells, not on your microbiome. So if you're, let's say, 10% human cells and genetics, and you're 90% animal microbiome, then don't you think it would be prudent that we do this? But it hasn't changed. Our knowledge of the microbiome has changed in the last decade incredibly, exponentially. I would think that safety testing needs to be done on our microbiome. And I'm even hearing more and more microbiologists talking about this and saying even medications' efficacy will be based on the stability of the microbiome or the diversity of the microbiome or the dysbiosis of the microbiome. Even vaccines how they work, it can be based on the microbiome. So it's everything they're starting to realize. And even foods, how we tolerate foods and not tolerate foods, can be based on our microbiome. So our safety testing is flawed. That's one. Two, when they bring all those chemicals together, they don't safety test them. They've all been safety tested individually. They're all considered generally regarded as safe. But when you put them all together, what is the toxicology of that? I want to give you an example of this. So since the 1920s, wheat has been bleached to make a beautiful white fluffy flour. It ages the flour very quickly and it makes it white quickly rather than waiting a couple of months. Recently, probably about the turn of the century, they realized that when they put chlorine gas into the flour, that there was a compound in the wheat that gives it its yellow color, and that's why they want to bleach it, that actually produces a chemical called alloxin. Now, it was a byproduct of the bleaching process on this yellow based plant phytonutrient that's in the wheat. They didn't realize for that long that alloxin was being produced. Now, alloxin is used in research for two reasons. One, to produce type 1 diabetes in mice. If you give them 60 milligrams per kilogram of alloxin, it will produce type 1 diabetes in mice. And if you want to cause cancer in mice, because it's a cancer-forming chemical as well, you give them 40 milligrams, one dose, 40 milligrams per kilogram. Now, we're never going to be eating that within the wheat, but what's the small doses every day that we're eating with these bleached flours? So that's just one example of what we know, that when we put a bunch of chemicals together or we do a process to food, we're not looking and researching that. So something to be aware of. Everything that I've been talking about, you can find in my book, Lab to Table. It is available through our website, changinghabits.com.au. You can also find it on Kindle. And if you like Audible books like me, you can get it on audio. You can either get that through our website or you can also get it on Audible. And if you have a subscription to Audible, then you know what you get. You get one book a month. It's wonderful. There is such a push towards us becoming vegan. There are foods out there that taste like meat, look like meat, smell like meat, but aren't meat. There's milks out there, there's cheeses out there. I could give you the ingredients of the cheeses. And what's really scary, there are scientists out there that want to genetically modify us in order to make us allergic to meat. And that's what is happening, is that there is such a push for this. But without animals, we cannot have healthy soils. We cannot have organic matter. We also cannot hold water and carbon into our soils if we do not have these animals. And when an animal gets old and when they are suffering, then they will pass away. It's a question worth asking as to, without having animals and without having them for our own health, because if we need animals because we live in an extreme environment, in a cold environment where there's not a lot of sun, such as in the northern hemisphere, towards the Arctic Circle, you've got Sweden, you have Norway, you have Iceland, and even in Australia, we've got the southern part of Australia, which doesn't get light till very late, and it gets dark very early. If we're not giving ourselves the nutrition, then how can we think the best that we can possibly think? How can we be physically fit to the best that we can so that we can get out there and regenerate our soils, regenerate our land, and be part of a society? The other thing I want to talk to you about is mental illness and our nutrition. We're seeing more and more people that have gone plant-based having more and more mental health issues. So if you are vegan and you are having mental health issues, I want you to really consider what you're consuming. It's about being ethical about everything that we're consuming. So it's not the plant, it's the how. It's not the animal, it's the how. So I've talked to you about regenerative farming, practices, if we grow our plants that way, if we grow our animals that way, if we buy local, then we stop being a global disaster and we start concentrating on our community. So if you do want to remain vegan, then the best thing is that you can do is eat ethical foods. Buy foods in your local community. If you have, chickpeas are grown here in Australia. So are many legumes, but many of them are sprayed with Roundup. So you must make sure that you're getting organic and try and buy it as locally as you possibly can. All your plant-based foods can be grown fairly locally. And if we stick to these rules, and if we look for farmers in our farmers market that are using regenerative processes, I believe we can save the planet. It doesn't matter what you choose to be, whether you choose to be plant-based or whether you choose to be completely carnivore. But what you must do, and I guess I shouldn't say must to you, but what you should consider is where you're sourcing your food from. How ethical is it? And is it part of a solution, or are you part of a problem in your purchasing? So you are all powerful in your purchasing of food and other commodity as well. But I'm a nutritionist, I concentrate on food. So you are all powerful when it comes to doing this. So choose your food wisely, choose regeneratively, ethically, look at your farmers, go to your farmers markets, and of course, be as local as you possibly can. And I'd like to finish with a little quote. We destroy our land decision by decision. We improve the land decision by decision. We destroy our health decision by decision, and we improve our health decision by decision. Thank you for listening. It's one of my favorite topics at the moment because I want people to realize that our purchasing power can change the world and save the planet and the animals and your health.